Hi, welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, this morning we'll be examining a major shift in Nigeria's foreign and strategic engagement, the new bilateral agreement between Nigeria and Turkey, and what they mean for the country going forward. Now, Nigeria and Turkey established diplomatic relations in 1960, the same year Nigeria gained independence. Over the decades, that relationship has grown from basic diplomatic exchanges into cooperation, into trade, education, defense, and cultural relations. In recent years, ties have deepened significantly, particularly in security cooperation, construction, aviation, and military hardware, positioning Turkey as one of Nigeria's most active non-Western partners. That partnership entered a new phase on January 27, 2026, during President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's state visit to Ankara, the Turkish capital, where both countries signed 9 bilateral agreements. The deals aim to raise bilateral trade from about $2 billion to $5 billion and expand cooperation across defense and counterterrorism, energy, trade facilitation, media, education, diaspora engagement, and halal infrastructure. The agreements include a formal counterterrorism and defense pact, building on Nigeria's use of Turkish drones and attack helicopters, the establishment of a joint economic and trade committee to unlock investments, and energy cooperation that could position Nigeria as a hub in Africa's energy restructuring. There are also human-focused components, from media collaboration to women's affairs and diplomatic training. So what do these new terms mean for Nigeria's security, economy, diplomacy, and regional influence in West Africa? To help us unpack the implications, we are joined by Ambassador Ismail Abba Yusuf, the immediate past ambassador of Nigeria to the Republic of Turkey. Ambassador, thank you for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on your program.
All right, now we have seen this bilateral agreement take place just a few days ago. Nigeria and Turkey have maintained diplomatic relations through history since 1960. Now, how has this relationship evolved over the decades, and what milestones set the stage for today's agreement, for another bilateral agreement or bilateral agreements to continue happening? There must have been successes over the years. So can you give us a brief rundown of that?
Yes, like you highlighted in your introductory remarks, by the agreements and MOU signed between Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, which covers, of course, trade, defense, security, youth development, higher education, and collaboration in capacity building between the respective ministries of foreign affairs. Both countries intend to strengthen strategic partnership in diplomacy, security, economic development, and for mutual prosperity. The new agreement on trade, for example, aims to create new or expand trade and investment opportunities from the current value of $668 million as of September 2025, to the aspiration of $5 billion over the next few years. And one of the early mechanisms towards achieving this milestone, this aspiration, is the joint declaration to establish a joint economic and trade committee, to strengthen institutional economic cooperation between the two countries. The JETCO will, of course, obviously complement the existing framework, which encompasses the Nigeria-Turkish Business Council, established by both countries in January 2021 to mobilize the private sectors of both countries towards greater promotion of trade and investment. So essentially this is, and of course, as countries continue to relate, they would seek to expand frontiers for mutual benefits. And as obstacles come up, both countries will naturally sit down to look for ways of overcoming such obstacles. And it is because of that realization that periodically high-level consultations are held between government officials, which sometimes culminate in state visits for review of relationship and then fine-tuning relationships towards having the desired outcome. So the recent visits and agreements are not the first. It's a continuation of alignment of interests to align with shifting realities of the global market and internal dynamics of both countries, so that they will continue to relate as friends that they are. Note that the relationship between Nigeria and Turkey is deep, very, very deep, based on mutual trust. Realize also, you ask, why Turkey? Why should Nigeria continue to relate with Turkey at a strategic level? Note that Turkey is an advanced economy, even by OECD standard. It's a prosperous country, industrialized. GDP is about $1.7 trillion, and GDP nominal is between $18,000 to $20,000. And then, of course, PPP, purchasing power parity, is even estimated at $40,000. And in the area of defense, Turkey is a member of NATO, a very, very strong member of NATO, number 2 after the United States of America in terms of supply of weapons and military personnel, actually, weapons and personnel. So, and of course, they have a burgeoning defense industry that is captivating the world with new platforms that are relevant to our defense needs. And of course, they're also cost effective, So it's a place to go to, and then of course, it's working well for us.
All right, Ambassador, now let's break down the bilateral agreement. There are different components to it when it comes to security and defense, when it comes to trade, economy and investment, as well as energy infrastructure, as well as socio-economic components. But let's look at security and defense. Now, the agreement includes a formal defense and counter-terrorism pact building on previous collaborations, such as, Turkish drones and the T-1298 attack helicopters. Now, with this, what practical impact could this have on Nigeria's fight against insurgency? And some would ask, okay, why Turkey? How are their own defense and counterterrorism strategies, I would say, or technology would be able to help Nigeria other than other places like the United States?
Okay, yeah. In addition to, of course, I just mentioned about the defense industry, how strong it is. But in addition to the defense industry, the Turkish policy framework on counterterrorism and counterinsurgency is very strong. You realize that Turkey is involved in the counterterrorism activities in Syria. They were involved in Libya. Of course, Libya. You know that one of the problems we have in the Sahel is related to the collapse of Libya. The collapse of the regime of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya and the unbridled spread of uncontrolled weapons and all that. So Turkey has very good experience in counterterrorism. So Nigeria is bound to benefit from capacity building, intelligence sharing. They have assets in Somalia. Turkey actually stabilizes Somalia. So it's a big part of the will benefit, far from the willingness to sell high-end defense equipment to Nigeria. Note also that not every country is willing to sell defense equipment to every country, because it's at the core of the international prestige and power of most countries to keep their defense arsenals to themselves. So the willingness of Turkey to sell to Nigeria is what Nigeria is trying to exploit. And quite frankly, again, in terms of cost, Nigeria has cross-sectorial demands for resources, so everything cannot go on defense. So you have to look for, while equipments in Europe and America are very, very expensive, in Turkey we could find preferential costs, and then, of course, appropriate technology. There is an arrangement also for the Turkish defense industry to come and establish in Nigeria as a gateway to also selling their equipment in Africa through Nigeria, if possible. So these are some of the benefits we get.
All right. With doing that, that would be a total different ball game for Nigeria as well, having a situation of being able to ship out from the country. But let's look at trade, economy, and investment. Now, one of the major goals is to increase bilateral trade from $2 billion to $5 billion. Which sector do you see as driving this growth, and how will Nigeria diversify beyond oil when trying to hit this target?
Well, the target is not sacrosanct. It can go up, it can go down anytime. Such is the dynamic of international trade. For example, between 2021 and 2023, while I was still ambassador in Turkey, trade rose to $2 billion, as against 668 last year. The reason being that Nigeria at that time was selling crude oil to Turkey and natural gas. So that is because of discovery of oil and gas by Turkey in the East Mediterranean, that market is probably off. And then areas Nigeria can take advantage of definitely is agriculture. Nigeria is a great agricultural country with potential to export. There's a lot of interest in Turkey for Nigeria's agricultural products for value addition. And of course, you will say that we shouldn't be a country exporting raw materials and all, but okay, but we cannot also, even if we develop the industrial capacity to harness our raw materials and add value, we cannot integrate all the raw materials, so we must export. So Turkey is a very good potentially Turkey can absorb a lot of raw materials from Nigeria.
All right. Now, Ambassador, you spoke about value addition. Now, could these agreements stimulate job creation, entrepreneurship, and technology development within Nigeria, particularly for young people and small businesses as well?
Absolutely, in all fields. I'm aware also that the Turkish aerospace, TUSAS, is desirous of training Nigerian engineers, Nigerian young engineers, to be able to manufacture on their own aerospace products, equipments for aircrafts and military drones. So there is opportunity. As you export, of course, as you have the opportunity to export, you're going to expand agricultural activities, which will create jobs. And capacity building and technology transfer, which we expect from Turkey, will also create a lot of jobs. Note that one of the agreements that was signed previously and reinforced at this last meeting is on youth development and higher education. The focus is to train more Nigerian youth on engineering, because engineering is the backbone of any industrial development. Given our population and our size and our aspiration and national requirements, we still don't have enough engineers in Nigeria. So that is obvious that there will be opportunities for job
All right. Now, Turkey specifically has expressed support for cooperation between its energy firms and Nigerian companies. You just made mention that the reason for a decrease in export of oil to Turkey is because of the discovery of oil in the Eastern Mediterranean. Now, how might this collaboration impact Nigeria's energy sector, including oil, gas, and renewable projects?
Frontier of demand for renewable energy in all over the world, and Turkey has expertise in renewable energy. But before that, we already have about 4 Turkish companies in Nigeria that are into electricity, improvement of facilities and infrastructure in the national grid. And I think, I'm not very sure of that, but I think they are engaged in activities with cost of up to $3 billion over time. So it's the new frontier of renewable energy is an area that both countries can fully cooperate and work on. And as the industrial capacity of Turkey also expands, there may be need for them also to continue to import gas, because natural gas, which Nigeria has in abundance, is a very, very big requirement, especially given what is happening between Russia and Ukraine in Europe. So I think it's not off the table. Maybe with more understanding and need, probably Turkey will come back to buying gas again from Nigeria.
All right, now.
And then I didn't mention the area of mining. Turkish companies are interested in investing in the mining sector in Nigeria, and this agreement that has taken place, and MOUs are going to provide the enabling environment for them to come in and invest in the mining sector with their heavy machineries, and of course add value to the use of solid minerals and rare earth metals for national development and mutual prosperity of both countries.
Now, Ambassador, we know that the mining sector is a very controversial sector when it comes to the way it is carried out. So how can it be stabilized for the MOU to take full place and make sure that everything goes according to plan?
Well, I don't know whether it is controversial or not, but there's global best practice in whatever we do. So once we abide by global best practice, there are global regulations on mining, against illegal mining and all that. Once we have the internal regulatory framework in place and they are effective, once adequate security is provided around mining sites, it is easy for investors to come and establish infrastructure. So it's actually up to us. I think the government has been doing the best it can, but we're not hearing too much from the private sector in terms of going into mining as a business, real business. So it's up to the Nigerian private sector. In this regard, the Nigeria-Turkish Business Forum has also been doing a lot to bring a light awareness to Nigerians on global best practice, on regulations, on how to attract foreign investments. You will note that the Business Council led by Dele Oye anchored the Business Forum during the presidential visit, and new information exchange between the two sides and discovery of new opportunities, of course, will be made bare for all the interested parties of the business sector. The business sector runs every economy. So it's up to the business sector, after agreements are signed, to take advantage of the framework provided.
Ambassador, agreements on media, higher education and diaspora cooperation, as well as women's affairs, were also signed now. What are the expected human development outcome for Nigeria for these initiatives, aside from the one that you mentioned earlier, or opening when it comes to job security as well?
Well, on women development, I think the mechanics of those agreements will be made known once the delegation led by the Minister of Women Affairs returns to Nigeria. And of course, on media, similarly, you have specific issues of agreement. But the general thing on media, for example, is cooperation in exchange of information to capacity building also, and then of course collaboration to ensure, because Turkey believes they share similar cultural relationship with Nigeria, and they also believe that the media, the international media, global media is sometimes unfair to the country. So they, just like the international media is also unfair to Nigerian and African countries sometimes. So they believe that collaboration between both countries in areas of media, sharing information and strategy would enable them confront negative media activities against their respective countries. So the issue of job creation, I've stated earlier how it will work. By the time the agreements and MOUs are brought back and normally passes through the normal ratification process, National Assembly and all that, it goes to the stage of dissemination at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And then the specific areas will be laid bare. But I assure you that the agreements, all media, women affairs, youth development, defense, security, trade, and investment has further strengthened the possibilities between the two countries. A lot has been going on previously, so but this further strengthened the relationship between the two countries.
All right, now earlier you made mention that Turkey has a history of engagement in African peacekeeping, including Somalia, as you mentioned. Now, how might these agreements position Nigeria as a regional partner in West Africa, in West African security and stability?
Well, it's back again to what I said earlier. I will not be able to tell you specifics, but I know that there will be capacity building, there will be strategy sharing, there will be information intelligence sharing between the two sides, given Turkey's experience in those very volatile areas, which are now moving to the Sahel towards Nigeria. So they have been part of it, so they know they've been able to address some of these issues. Recall that Turkey rose from the ashes of the Ottoman Empire, which in itself was an empire that had a history of military incursions here and there. So the country has a history of addressing insurgencies and counterinsurgencies. So we hope that Nigeria will be able to benefit from the experiences of Turkey.
All right, now let's look ahead. When it comes to these type of agreements, a country needs to be in a tip-top position to make sure that it is executed properly. Now, are there any potential challenges or risks that Nigeria needs to manage carefully to ensure the success of this strategic partnership?
Yes, I think the only area is in terms of situational awareness, that in Turkey, for example, they have a Department for Development Cooperation, where business people seeking to do investment outside Turkey would deliberately go and seek information. We have a similar department in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Nigeria, but hardly do business people in Nigeria take interest in those departments. People simply, I suspect that people simply, go online or make contacts and begin to embark on business ventures. Now, the only obstacle, like I said, is awareness. Once we create awareness that government has signed agreements The agreement is to create enabling environments for Nigerian businesses to engage their counterparts outside Nigeria, awareness about global best practices, especially in consumer packaging, and then for exports, and then tariff and trade, information on preferential waivers of taxes, then information about local content and all that. These are the areas. I think awareness, there must be willingness on the part of the private sector to take advantage of, because it's not just enough to go sign agreement. At the defense and security level, it is government to government, so it is easy. There are existing frameworks for taking advantage of, for implementation of these agreements. But on the trade and investment aspect, government does not engage in trade and investment. It is the private sector that does that. But happily, the Nigeria-Turkiye Business Council is on top of this particular situation, and NASIMA is also on board, the National Association of Chambers of Commerce, Mines and Industry. They're on board, so I figure that it may be easy to overcome some of these possible impediments. As for youth development and women affairs, these are all institutional to government, so it's easy. There are existing frameworks, in terms of obtaining scholarships and screening people for scholarships and all that. So I don't think there will be any big issue in terms of implementation and absorption of provisions of the agreements.
All right, thank you very much, Ambassador Ismail Abba Yusuf, for shedding more light on Nigeria-Turkiye, a new bilateral agreement. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, have a great day. All right, that is all we have for this segment. We'll be going on a quick break. When we come back, we'll be looking at the front page of our national dailies and see what made it there. So make sure you stay tuned. We'll be right back.